I'd like to introduce Ian, our product director and managing director, and obviously excellent ukulele player, and Paul.
Good morning. Thank you. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Boy, we're excited. Once a year we get excited. Those of you who have been here before, you know that every year we like to see what Microsoft have given us. Each year it's usually about a month before we do this. This year it was about 2 weeks before we did this, so we actually got the latest version of 2017. So thank you for all coming. It's great to see so many people interested in seeing what's new in the NAV product. Today is an education day, as Matt said. It's not intended to be a sales day, it's meant to be an education day. We want to show you what's new in the product. We want to show you what we've been working on at the NAV people, and there's a whole bunch of sessions this afternoon that hopefully will just maybe take you from no knowledge about something to some knowledge about something, which is a good step on the way. So, it's official. Those of you that have been here for the last few years, hands up, who's been here for the last year or two? Yeah, quite a lot of you, great. So, you know that usually at this time, I start off by saying that this is the best version of NAV ever. I said it at 2013, I said it at 2015 and 2016, and oh my goodness, do I believe it this year. Even more than I've always believed it. The rate of change and improvement in this product has been unbelievable in the last few years, and certainly exceptionally in this last year. And we'll talk more later on as to why that is. But consequently, we've got an awful lot of stuff to get through to show you today. So, I was going to make the obvious point that this version trumps all the previous versions. That won't be the first one, last one today. It's also worth saying that if you're on a classic version, how many people here are on a classic version of NAV? Yeah, still about the usual sort of fair number of people. The classic being, for those of you that never were on classic, anything that was before about 2009. So many of these people are on, I don't know, 10, 12, 15-year-old versions of NAV. So for those of you on Classic and haven't upgraded yet, well done for waiting for the best version ever. Those of you that are on the previous versions, 2016, 2015, and so on, come along to my afternoon session when we're talking about upgrades. There's a way to get a lot of this nice stuff without much pain, so we'll talk about that. So, I'll just talk a little bit about what Microsoft are doing and where this product is evolving. So, I'm going to do a straw poll. How many people are using or are thinking of using Office 365? Yeah, that's a lot of people. That in the last year and the year before has just grown and grown and grown. We at the NAV people use Office 365. As a business owner, I think it's fantastic. I think it's an amazing way to manage your Office licensing and email and so on. But now it's growing and growing. It's becoming much more of a platform. Becoming much more about the combination of products that are joined together to make that platform. I actually think that in a few years' time, using Office 365 will be as prevalent as if I said to you, who uses Office? And I'm sure that is just about everybody. Office 365, I think, will be in that category in a couple of years' time, where, could you imagine today if somebody said, we've decided not to use Microsoft Office? Okay, we're not going to use Excel and Word and PowerPoint and those things and Outlook anymore. It's unfathomable to think that. And I think going forward in the next couple of years, it's going to be the same around this whole Office 365 and infrastructure. Not just because of the Office, but because of the way it's expanded into the other product sets within Microsoft. So part of that change of what they're doing around the product is about introducing more interconnectivity with Office 365 and that platform. The other core part of what happened in this 2017 version was an awful lot of work on simplification. I cannot tell you how many years I have taken NAV out of the box since 1995 and done really simple things to pages to tidy them up, get rid of fields that nobody wants, add fields that everybody wants. We've done that for, 2 decades now. Finally, somebody sat down in Vedbeck. Thank you, Jesper. Finally, somebody sat down and went through screens and said, how can we tidy these up? How can we make it more simple? So that's a big part of what's happened in this release. And then finally, and again, we'll show you some of this stuff today, there are a lot of new product opportunities coming out. There's Cortana Machine Learning Business Intelligence. There's Power Apps and Microsoft Flow, new products that came out very, very recently that interact with NAV. And the idea of extensions and apps is a very core part of where the software is moving forward, so that people can create apps, have them on an app store, download those as apps, and have a whole simple process of updating your NAV system with new functionality. What else are we excited about? We're excited about this setup and configuration, user experience, simplification. Okay? When we look at that part alone, that's what we're going to talk about now. We're going to look at NAV and see what they've done to improve how easy it is to set up the things that in the past have been more complicated. You don't do them very often, so you're not used to doing them. Also, what have they done to make things that you do all the time easier to use? Obviously, we've got used to phone apps that are very easy to use. We're used to phone apps being something that you don't even have to be told about. You press the buttons, it's obvious what to do. That's never been the case with ERP. We started off 20 or 30 years ago making them complicated. We've carried on leaving them complicated. So this is going to improve our lives, our end users' lives, as the software just becomes more obvious to use. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is how the pages themselves have been remodeled. So we're going to talk about the simplicity side of NAV. Better pages, a new user interface, commonality around simplicity of functions. So just the way the screens look is better, but also the way that you do tasks is easier. Okay? And there's some really common functions where that applies to. Okay? And how easy it is to set up the complicated parts of NAV. There's even some really straightforward niceties. Just a couple more points there, Paul. So there's some really simple little niceties. I mean, really silly little things. There's a default for the quantity you would like to default onto a sales order. Why it wasn't one, I don't know, because I would have thought that was a pretty good default. But it's little things. They've added lots of little things like that to improve the product. So we'll talk about those. And by the way, there's a whole session on NAV 2017 this afternoon. So what we're showing you this morning is only part of the story. Okay, so we're going to talk about terminology improvements. That's the other thing I wanted to mention. Some of the words that we are using in NAV have been odd over the years. I would like to change some more, but the ones they've changed so far are very good. Some of the wording around, I think, ledgers and these sorts of words, some of which apply, but item ledger is still an odd one to me. And most people see that as an item movement rather than item ledger. It's a bit of an accounting term that doesn't really seem to make sense in the world of inventory. But we'll talk about that a little bit about that as well. So we're now going to show some software. We're going to do this on the web client. Most of what we're going to do this morning is on the web client. If you haven't seen the web client before, we're very enthusiastic about the web client. I think I said a year or so ago that I thought they will never kill off the Windows client, it will just fade away. This is another release at which that applies. They're adding more functionality to the web and less, and they're not maintaining that Windows client, so they're not improving it in the same rate they're improving the web client. And we love the web client. It's really nice to use. So what we're going to do is we're going to go from our sales panel and we're going to find some customers. Go to the customer screen and some very straightforward things. Now, this might surprise you, but that balance field has not been on the standard NAV system for 20 years. If you've had it in your system, it's because we've added it. The balance field is not normally on a customer list. A ridiculous thing, should have always been there, of course. We can go into the customer card, and when you go to the customer card, you'll see it's just tidier. We haven't got a big chunk of fields on the general tab now. It's collapsed. The address is on its own tab, and you click on the address and contact blue bit, and it collapses those tabs. So the web client's really nice. So it's very simple. So when you look at a customer card, it's got just the basics. It's this customer, that's his name, that's how much money he owes. So again, they've just tidied the screens. Of course, all the other fields are available, and if you want to bring them back on, you can, but it's just tidier. You'll see if we click on the prices button that we've got tooltips. Tooltips have been in NAV, I can't remember since when, but must be 10, 15 years. The space to put a tooltip has always been there. Nobody ever typed one in. So they finally got somebody in Denmark to sit and type in some tooltips, and now they appear all over the application, which is brilliant. The history fact box on the right-hand side now shows as a tile format. It's funny, actually, how much nicer that looks and is from an end-user perspective than the little lines of numbers that it used to have. So very, again, web client only, actually. Yeah, sorry, well, there was something I was going to say on the, yes, going to go to customer. So we're going to go into an order. I'll drill into an order, bring up a sales order. Again, you'll see simplified screen. You haven't got all the name and address information on the header. Why do you need that? You've put in the customer, so you don't need to see all that information. It's moved away. We use the word customer, not sell to customer, for example. You can go down to the line, and you can type item there, and you can go to the description and do a lookup of the item. So you don't have to have a number. Or you can just type the description of the item, and it'll find the item. So again, just normal use of nav is nicer. You don't have to have that number field. And if you look at the shipping and billing tab, you'll see that you've got nothing actually on this tab because it's just a default sell to address. But if I change that and change it to an alternative shipping address, then it says, okay, these are addresses you've already got now. Click on OK, and then you get the name of the address for that alternate shipping address. So just nicer user interface mechanism. You can do the same with the bill to. Who do you want to bill it to? Another customer or just to me? Yeah. It's just nicer user interface stuff. And similarly, if you come out and you go to a job card, just to show another part of NAV, to show it's not just in the sales area. So we go from our role center, go to jobs and resources, go to a list of jobs, and you'll see, when I go into a job card, it used to be a job card was just a header record. You had to drill down to go to the tasks. Now you've got the job card with the tasks of the job built in. Also, you'll see we're using the term budget and actual, not scheduled and contract. For those of you who have used jobs and resources and wondered what on earth that terminology meant, we spent a long time wondering too. They finally changed it to budget and actual. So again, simplification, terminology changes. Cleaner screens, and that applies right through the application. Go to the 2017 sessions this afternoon to see more, but the vendor card, the item card, you'll see it later on in other parts of our demos. Lots of things to do with simplification of the screens, lots of things about refined terminology, and tooltips, I think, are a great addition. So now we're going to talk about functional simplification. So the way I think is easiest to summarize this is they're making it easy to do difficult things. They're making it easier to do the setup things that you don't do very often, and therefore you're not sure what to do. And they're making it easier to do things that you do a lot, and therefore you need it as easy as possible. Okay? There's different things you do to make something easy, depending whether it's a regular thing or a rare thing that you use it for. So to do this, we're going to look at the CRM part of NAV. We're going to go from the CRM panel in our role center. We're going to go into list of contacts, and we're going to use our cross-column search. It's not new in 2017, but if you haven't seen it before in the web client, you can search on one word across all the columns. You don't have to say which column you're filtering on. And we're going to select John and create an opportunity for John. Now, for those of you that have seen the thing before, look, straight into an opportunity card, type the opportunity, no wizard. Wizards have been in NAV getting in the way of CRM for many years. It's part of the reason people don't like to use the old NAV CRM, especially in the classic world. But it's very clunky going through the wizard, next, finished. You know, I want to just record an opportunity, get on with it. So they've removed wizards. So we simply put in the thing, say who the salesperson is, what is the sales cycle, job done, there's our opportunity. Equally, we can create an interaction. So we go to the interactions, again, straight into a card. What's the interaction? What type of template it is? It's an outgoing email. What was happened on the outgoing call? And that's it. Job done, interaction out of the way. That used to be about 5 screens of next, 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 finish. Okay. If you want to look at any more about that, there's a session on 2017 and CRM, so about CRM in NAV this afternoon, so go along to that. Okay, so now we're going to look at, so the interesting thing there was, those are things you do a lot. If you're a sales guy, you do that stuff a lot. You create interactions all the time. You create opportunities, hopefully, all the time. So taking wizards away makes a lot of sense. But now we look at something like workflow, which is something you don't set up very often. Standard workflows, you don't set them up very often. They're normally an administrator type person. So what we're going to do to show this is just go into a customer. We're going to go from a customer, we're going to navigate to their contact record. And we'll see that there is an action which is to create a new workflow. Create approval workflow, okay? So if you haven't got workflow set up in your system, and you want to create a workflow to do an approval of a customer whenever it's created, you click that button. And what does it do? It comes up with a wizard, okay? Which might seem ironic, but of course, this is where a wizard is a good thing. You don't do it very often. You need to be stepped through. You don't need to step through an opportunity or an interaction, but you do need to step through something you don't do very often. So we can go through there and we can say, yes, what a new approval workflow setup. And who's the approver going to be? It's going to be this person here. When do you want it to start? When the user changes a specific field. Go next. Okay, which field? By default, it's the credit limit. Quite a good guess, actually. That's just standard. It says, well, it's probably a good likelihood you want the credit limit. You could change it to any other field. I only want to do it when it's increased. And by default, it's even set the text to say the customer credit limit was amended. So nice, easy process for setting up. That's it. The workflow's finished. Job done. If you create a new customer now, or sorry, if you amend the credit limit on a customer now, it'll start that workflow. Okay? So in that case, the wizard makes a lot of sense. It's something you don't do very often. It makes sense to show that in that way. And finally, we're going to show the other parts of NAV 2017 which they've improved in a similar way. There's lots of things in NAV which you don't do very often. Maybe you do it once on implementation. You do it very rarely. So you see at the top of the ribbon bar, we've got assisted setup. It's got a tooltip to tell you what to do. When you click on it, you get a list of all the complicated things in NAV that you probably don't do very often. Things like setting up your SMTP email, setting up the cash flow forecasting, setting up email logging. How many people use email logging? Very few people use email logging because they don't know how to set it up. It's very quick. So click on here, set a few things, email logging in place. So just to show how that works, just going to go through one. You've already set it up. Do you still want to carry on? Go through an email, go through a wizard. Who's the email provider? Is it Office 365 or somebody else? And so on and so on. Yeah. What's the username and password? It even picks up because we've already set it before, you can still go and use this mechanism to amend it, not just set it up. Okay? So, we could also just show, just very briefly, the mechanism for migrating business data. So again, they've put some front end to that idea of, I've got some data, I need to bring that data into my NAV system. It's going to be in an Excel spreadsheet. I'm going to populate that Excel spreadsheet. They're also doing integration to things like QuickBooks. So if you've already got a QuickBooks system, you can import it into NAV. But in this case, we're going to go import from Excel. Download a template. It'll give us a template for customers, vendors, and items, all the sort of stuff that we do. For those of you that work with the NAV people, we do hot weeks where we get in a room and just sit down for 5 days, get some customers, items, and vendors, load it in the system, and get on with the idea of setting up a NAV system. So this mechanism is similar to a mechanism that we've had in the past. A lot of the best ideas are the same. So now you've got a nice Excel spreadsheet with GL accounts, customers, vendors, and items. We can import that information and get on with setting up our NAV system. So the next thing we're going to show. How many accountancy type people are there in the room? Yes, quite a few of you, yes. The accountants in the room, as we all know, don't need too much excitement. So I need to give you a bit of a warning here because this might excite you. If it excited me and I'm not even an accountant. So we're going to go to show you an improvement to something you do a lot in NAV. Well, you do a lot in any system probably. So we're going to go to the customer, go into a customer account, we'll pick our usual Canon group, as everybody knows, and we're going to drill into a list of invoices. And you can see on the invoices, look at what we have at the top here. I'd like to correct this invoice, cancel the invoice, or create a corrective credit memo. Okay? So, in one button push, we can simply automate the process of correct means create a credit note and allow it to be amended. So I want to correct it. This invoice is wrong, so I want to credit it, create an invoice, amendable so that I can change it to repost. Cancel, obviously just create a credit note and post it. And credit, create a credit note but don't post it yet, I might want to amend it. Okay? So those are three new things that you can do on an invoice. We can select an invoice, correct it, and there's our correction. Isn't that a nicer mechanism we had before? So it's a really nice, really like that. Now, very excited about that. Slight disappointment, and you can all go in and speak to Jesper directly. This doesn't work for transactions that have gone through a warehouse. Okay? And the reason is, you can't just credit the items on a credit note for things that have gone from a warehouse because you need to put them back in the warehouse. Yeah? So it's really designed for certainly GL-only transactions, certainly transactions that are just coming out of stock but not a WMS part of NAV. So that's, but that's, let's not knock it. That's a really nice feature. And lastly, we want to show a new visual mechanism that we now have inside NAV. As many of you know, we've had these tiles on the Roll Center for a long time now. NAV had standard tiles, and we've exploited those tiles in our enhanced NAV for some time. But a nice new mechanism now is that if we go into a page like an item list, and we look on this little icon over on the right-hand side here, we can now look at that information in what they call a brick format. So brick format is just a visual control, a way of looking at any information. So you could look at a list of customers with their pictures on or their logos on. So products, it happens to fit very nicely with products, obviously. So you've got two different brick views. You've got big brick views and little brick views, depending which one you prefer. And of course, that gives us lots of capabilities to do lots of things. So that's a new control. It's really only exploited at the moment, I think, in items. It makes a lot of difference on the mobile phone, but it's a really nice control that we'll certainly be exploiting going forward. Very small thing. If you press escape now, it goes, oh, sorry, on the brick, there's a little menu icon. When you click that menu icon, you get direct access to that item's information, so you can use it like a mini card, in effect, and access any other part of that item's information. Okay? If you press escape now, it comes out of the screen. It didn't used to in the web client. It does now. That's now a sort of pretty well accepted web client feature. That brick control, again, is not on the Windows client. So as I think I said last year, how do you make a web client as good as a Windows client? Don't do anything with the Windows client. And eventually your web client gets better. So you might have noticed, when we're on items, just very briefly, on the item list, at the top of the item list, there was a thing saying about attributes. That's a really nice thing in 2017. If you go to the session this afternoon, you'll see all about the way you can attribute items. We're now going to talk about the phone client. The phone client came in last year at 2016. We were very excited about the phone client, and even in the NAV people, as soon as we had a phone client, we started to use it for recording our expenses, take a photograph of the receipt, type in the amount, and it's immediately in our NAV system. If you're interested in that stuff, there's a session this afternoon in Innovation and AP, because we added it as a standard part of our enhanced NAV. So the phone client gives you new opportunities. I think that's the difference. There are some things that you can do if you have a phone client that you don't do if you don't have a phone client. Prior to that, we were just typing in our expenses in our timesheet, as people often do. So some of the improvements around the phone client. Hands up, how many of you are using the phone client to manage your day here at the NAV People conference? Jolly good. So you should all have had details of an app which is using this app. It's just a NAV system with the list of presenters and sessions at the conference today. So first of all, what's changed? Well, you've got Donald Trump-styled icons. You see, he's only got little hands, so he can now reach the bottom of the screen very easily with his little fingers. So the main difference is first of all, if you look at an item list, you'll see the sort of brick view makes a lot of sense. You know, we're used to seeing things as icons, obviously, in this type of environment. But now you can select a line. You used to click on it and it went to the card. That's all you could do. Now you can actually select a line and go to another piece of information from selecting the line. Okay? Bearing in mind, this mobile client is the entirety of NAV. That is just an item list. It has access to every other piece of information on your item card and all the screens should you want it to do so. It's not a separate thing. It's just a different way of looking at your nav system. So the other things you can do are you can swipe left and you can swipe right. So when you swipe one way, you can see that I can swipe and then block an item. When I swipe and just tick the box, it'll block an item. When I swipe the other way, I can have up to 3 different options. So I can swipe to the right and say, add it to a purchase order, or add this item to a requisition worksheet. Okay? So again, they're just, because you can now do that, you could be stood on the railway station going, yes, we should have some more of those, yes, we should have more of those. So treating your nav information rather like you do with your email in your off time. Sat down watching the rugby, you can still be putting purchase orders of your inventory together. How wonderful would that be? Okay, are we going to show the UserDate app? So just to show an example, we just put together a couple of tables in nav, as you can imagine, with sessions and presenters, and used the tile icon to show Matt's weird face. And obviously, if you use this, you can see, you can go into the card, you can select the information, you can see whether it's suitable for you as a techie or not. And you can probably, can you swipe left and right? I can't remember. Yes, you can swipe to add it to, say, yes, I'm going to go to that session, or remove it. I'm not going to go to that session. It would be hugely helpful for us if in the break and at lunchtime you could do that. The reason is we will know if we've got an overload on a particular session. Okay? So that would be very useful if you could do that just for our balancing. When you're on a session, if you swipe to the right, you can rate it as good, neutral, or bad. There are only 3 options. That's why there are only those 3 options, okay? But that's another example of the sort of thing you can do. This app took, I don't know, an hour or something to put together. So, it's a good example of once you've got this environment, how nicely you can start to use your nav data in different ways. Okay, so all of that was about simplification, okay? Everything we showed you there was about things that are easy to use, effort to make things in NAV easier to use than they used to be, okay? Now, this next feature, whether you're an accountant or not, is going to excite you, okay? So I'm well aware that it's nearly break time. We're going to have a break in about 10, 15 minutes. If you're crossing your legs now, you're going to be in trouble. That's all I'm saying, okay? Because this is very exciting stuff. For years and years and years, we've been in the situation where you're in Outlook, an email comes in from a customer, you do something with that, I better go into NAV and deal with that, and here's an invoice that's come in from a supplier, I better go into NAV and deal with that, or forward it on to somebody else by email so they can do something with it, and so on. And now what we've got is NAV built within Outlook. And let's be fair, we all spend our time in Outlook. It's our normal place for our daily lives. So what Microsoft have been looking at is how can we keep you in Outlook, carrying on doing what you want to do with all this information that's coming in via email, which is still our main way of delivering information between organizations. So what we're going to show you now is what that Outlook client does and how it eases your life when you're using NAV. So we show Outlook. You can see we've got a guy here asking for 4 Paris chairs. And from there, we want to look at this customer's details. I'm just going to, Paul, I'm going to let you talk it through, if that's okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Is that good? Because that's what I was meant to do, wasn't it?
Yeah, the other 2.
Great, thank you.
So you can see in Outlook, as Ian said, it's just normal Outlook, but we've got an add-in that gets installed that you can push from your Dynamics NAV 2017 system, and it adds this couple of options here. The main option is Contact Insights. So as we see, we've got an email from David Hodgson at the Canon Group. If I click on Contact Insights, it'll now connect directly to my live NAV system. So this isn't cached data, this is live to my current NAV system, showing me information about the company that David Hodgson works for. And it does this because it knows This email address is David's email. David is a contact. He relates to the Canon group. Therefore, that's the Canon group's information. So I can see their balance. I can drill through and see all their other information. What David's asking is for a quote. So what would be nice from here is to be able to go in and actually create the quote without ever leaving Outlook. So there's a plus button I click on, and I get some options of documents I can create relating to this customer. So I've got sales quote, invoice, order, credits, and a reminder. So I click on the sales quote option, and I get a small sales quote screen. So this is, again, just the normal NAV sales quote, but shrunk down to the width of this panel I've got in Outlook. Straight away, it's filled in the customer as the Canon group because it knows where I came from. And it's also warned me that the customer is over credit. This is actually a new feature 2017, the way they're handling notifications. Previously, in older versions, that would have interrupted me and stopped my process. Here, it's just a warning that I can choose when I want to see, click on the details, and here I get my information about why they're over credit, etc. So I look at that notification. I can then go down to add my lines. This is fairly simple. He's asking for some Paris chairs, so I can go into the description, type Paris, and obviously it'll pick that up from the system, knowing I've got some Paris chairs. He's asking for 4, so I'm going to enter my quantity as 4, and that'll update my price and my totals. Finally, I need to get that back to David, so I go to my menu option on here, again, still within Outlook, and I say send by email. Now, because I've come from Outlook, it knows I'm using Outlook, so it knows it can pop up an Outlook window and give me some more information. So it's pre-formatted an Outlook message with the email they sent. It's got the template of the quotes. Now, this is actually a NAV report based on a Word template, so you can modify, customize these things as you want just by changing a Word template. And it's also attached a copy of my quotes in whatever format you currently have in NAV. So I can send David my quote. Now, if I've got email logging turned on, that'll obviously automatically be logged away against the contact that I sent them an email. So that's creating quotes. But Microsoft didn't just do this for the sales processing side of things, the customer side. They also put this functionality in on the vendor side, on purchasing. So you can see here I've got a second email from a lady named Jennifer. I'm not going to pronounce the surname. And she's chasing me for some money. So the vendor is asking me to pay an invoice. And they're also nudging because we're against the credit limits, and they want to know when we're going to pay some overdue debts. So again, I click on my contact insights. But this time, Jennifer isn't anyone I know. She must have started new at whichever company this is. So I need to add Jennifer as a contact in my NAV system. So I click on that option. Brings in her name from email address. Obviously, her email address, we know this is a person, and I can say this is a person that works at London Postmaster. Click on OK. And they'll add Jennifer as a contact in my system. So now, straight away, it flips over and shows me the vendor's card. So there's a couple of things we need to now do. Firstly, I want to handle this invoice. So I'm going to send that to my AP people using NAV's built-in OCR functionality. So I'm going to click on the option, and I'm going to say send to OCR. Pressing that will show me a list of attachments. She might have sent more than one document. And here, I'm going to press on OK. That document is then sent off to the OCR service, which will automatically try and work out what was said on the documents, match it to an existing purchase order or receipt, and put it through our invoice matching mechanism. The second thing I need to do is work out why we're overdue and when we're going to pay. So because this is NAV, I can click through on these blue fields, go through to the balance, and I can see all my vendor ledger entries. If I pop this out to give myself more room, I'll get a nice web-based view, this time in brick format, showing me all my overdue entries. And I can see that I'm probably going to pay these around the 20th, so I can let Jennifer know that. So I can simply reply to this and say, we'll pay around the 20th. So I've handled my purchasing, my vendor. Finally, the last stage of this process, whilst we were dealing with Jennifer, David, who obviously is very keen to get his 4 Paris chairs, has emailed me back and said, thanks, but he wants 5% discount. Well, luckily, we make a massive margin on Paris chairs. We sell a lot of them in demos. So we're happy to give that discount. We'll make the order. This time, what Outlook add-in has done is it's identified that there's a sales quote number in here it knows. So it gives me, under the action bar, a document links option. I click on here, and we'll see what it'll do is show me the quote that's been referenced. And if you look down in the body, it's highlighted in yellow. This is where I found that information from. So I've got the quotes. I'm in NAV. He wants 5%, and then he'll do the deal. I can go down here, give my 5% discount. I know that he's agreed to that, so I can go to make order, so I can convert my quote into an order. That's now an order placed on the system, so it's all ready to be shipped out or sent to the warehouse. A couple of things. Firstly, I want to record the fact that this email was his confirmation, so that later on I know that it was actually a confirmed purchase order. So I've clicked on the details option here to see the fact boxes. We're now looking at the fact boxes that are usually portrayed on the right-hand side of a sales order. And for those of you familiar with us, you'll notice this enhanced information fact box at the top. This is a standard part of enhanced nav, which we're talking about in a session later on. All I want to do, click on attachments, click on get email, and it'll now ask me what I want to attach my email to. So it knows I'm attaching it to the order. This is I guess it's a purchase order. PO. And that document is now attached to that order for anyone else to see. So we know that was email confirmation. So that's all attached. Last step, we need to let David know that we're going to send this order, so I can, again, send my email confirmation of my order directly from Outlook. It's populated the information again. I can use different templates. Here's the email I'm replying to. There's a sales order, and I can send that happily off to David and go on about my day.
Wow. Isn't that bloody good? I think that's an amazing thing. I think that's just, I think it's one of the best additions to NAV for a long time. Would you agree? Think your users will like that. So, all of that stuff that we've been talking about in this session has been about ease of use. I might have said that a few times. Simplicity and ease of use. We spent a long time adding functionality into ERPs. Now we're just trying to make it very obvious and very easy to use that functionality. We've made it very easy to create workflows, to do the things you don't do very often. The interesting thing about this is a lot of that Outlook integration stuff, particularly, is available through doing what we call a technical upgrade. As I said, we're doing that this afternoon in the upgrade session this afternoon. We're doing it ourselves at the NAV people. A technical upgrade is the same way that many of you did in the old classic days, where you put the latest version of the technology without taking the latest version of the application. So come along and talk about that if you're interested. But I think that Outlook client is just a huge addition to our functionality.